Close your eyes. Imagine a place where history breaks. It is not a happy place. It is the Balkan Peninsula in the early 90s. The sun seems to struggle to pierce through the smoke and the grayness of the brutalist concrete. There, in the middle of the disintegration of what was once Yugoslavia, a web of shadows began to weave. A web that years later, the FBI and Interpol would call the Pink Panthers. But before the diamonds, before the expensive suits in Zurich, and before the high-speed escapes through the French Riviera, there was cold. There was necessity. And above all, there was a discipline forged in chaos. To understand the Pink Panthers, we must not look at the luxury shop windows of Bond Street in London. We must look back, towards the besieged cities of Serbia and Montenegro. Cities like Belgrade or Cetinje, where a generation of young men saw their future evaporate amidst economic sanctions and ethnic conflicts. Imagine these men. They are tall, athletic, intelligent. Many of them did not want to be criminals. They wanted to be engineers, architects, Olympic athletes. But the world they knew collapsed. The factories closed. The universities became recruiters for war. Money was worth nothing to survive. The only option was the black market, smuggling gasoline, tobacco, basic foods. There they learned the first lessons. Lessons they would later apply to jewelry robbery. They learned logistics. They learned to move unseen across borders that changed every day. They learned to trust only their own, their clan, their code of silence. The war was their university, and smuggling was their first job. They were developing lethal skills, but the goal was not to kill. The goal was to thrive in the midst of ruin. While the West enjoyed the boom of the 90s, in this corner of Europe, an invisible army was brewing. An army that would soon cross those borders to collect a debt they felt the world owed them. Take a deep breath. Let this cold and gray atmosphere envelop you. There is no danger here, only history, only the story of how ambition begins when nothing else is left. Listen to the distant wind in the empty concrete streets. They were born there. We continue in the Balkan Peninsula. The air is still cold. The international economic sanctions against Slobodan Milosevic's Yugoslavia had strangled the country. Imagine the scene. Long lines to get bread. Hospitals without medicine. A broken state where the police and organized crime often wore the same uniform. In this environment, surviving required more than just cunning. It required structure. The future Pink Panthers were not common petty criminals. They were perfectionists. Necessity forced them to organize like a military logistics company. Every move had to be calculated. There was no room for error because the consequences of being caught by rival militias or by the state police were not prison, but death. The structure they created in these formative years was horizontal. There was no single godfather or supreme leader in the style of Italian mafia movies. It was a network of independent cells, connected by trust and common origin. If one cell fell, the rest of the network remained intact, safe and operational. This decentralization would years later become Interpol's nightmare. How do you stop an organization that has no head? The men who formed these cells shared common characteristics. They were ex-military, members of special forces, or elite athletes who had been left without a team. They possessed a discipline of iron. They knew how to handle extreme stress and, most importantly, they knew how to follow a plan to the letter. They learned to study the maps of European cities with the same precision with which a general studies the battlefield. They learned the art of surveillance, of infiltration, and of the quick exit. The goal was always the same: enter, take what is valuable, and disappear before the enemy. In this case, the jewelry security realized what was happening while you sleep. Imagine this network spreading silently through Europe, like invisible roots under the earth. They make no noise. They do not seek violence. They only seek opportunity. They are waiting, perfecting their techniques, preparing for the moment when the fog of war dissipates, and they can come out into the light of the most expensive shop windows in the world. The plan is already in motion. Feel the security of an organization that does not make mistakes. Everything is under control. Now, imagine a change of focus. We are no longer looking at the environment, but at the men, at the individuals. The grainy image shows a group of young men. Their faces are serious, their bodies tense. You can see the discipline in the way they move. This is a key point to understand the future success of the Pink Panthers, especially for an audience used to organized crime stories based on raw violence. This gang was different. It was a cerebral gang. The war in the Balkans was atrocious, but it was also a training ground. Many of the first members of the network went through elite military units, such as the Red Berets of Serbia. There, they did not only learn to handle weapons, they learned things much more useful for a white-collar jewelry thief. They learned controlled demolitions, how to cut steel structures without making noise, how to disable communication systems, how to drive vehicles at high speed under maximum pressure, and most importantly, they learned to plan an operation with meticulous redundancy. If plan A failed, there was a plan B, C, and D ready to be executed instantly. This military mentality eliminated the ego. There was no room for individual improvisation or vanity. The mission was the only thing that mattered. The mission and the safety of the team. An Interpol official would years later describe their modus operandi as a military special forces operation disguised as a jewelry robbery. And he was right. The precision of their strikes, timed to the second, was something never seen before in the civilian crime world. Imagine the level of emotional control, standing in front of millions of dollars in diamonds, with alarms that could activate at any moment, and keeping your heart rate low, working with steady hands, following the stopwatch in your mind. That coldness is not learned on the street. It is learned on the battlefield. These men knew that fear is useful if it is controlled, but fatal if it is allowed to dominate you. They were trained not to feel the fear of the beginner. They were trained to execute. Sleep now with the peace of mind that you are listening to the story of professionals. There is no chaos here, only a perfect execution of a plan. A discipline that would soon be applied not to destroy, but to take possession of the most precious stones in the world. Rest. The team knows exactly what they are doing. We reach a moment of relative calm. The war is over. It is the end of the 90s. The dust from the conflicts in the former Yugoslavia begins to settle, but the economic ruin remains. The soldiers return home. But what home? Their uniforms are worn and their medals are useless for buying food. It is at this moment when the smuggling network and the military cells merge into something new, something more ambitious. The local economy is dead, but a few hours away. In Western Europe, luxury shines with an offensive intensity for those who have nothing. Zurich, London, Paris, Dubai, cities that seem like different planets. There, a single watch in a shop window is worth more than the annual budget of a family in Montenegro. The decision was logical, almost inevitable. They had the skills, they had the structure, they had the discipline. They had contacts throughout Europe thanks to the Balkan diaspora. They only needed a target worthy of their talents. They decided not to dedicate themselves to drug trafficking, which brought too much attention, violence and long prison sentences. They decided not to dedicate themselves to bank robberies, which were complicated and the loot was often traceable, or in cash that was difficult to launder. They chose diamonds. Diamonds are small, light, easy to hide and transport across borders. They have a universal value that does not depend on a country's economy. And most importantly, there is a massive and sophisticated black market for these stones that operates in the shadows, away from government regulations. The transition was subtle at first. Small robberies to test their systems and their distribution network. Luxury watch robberies. Small shops. They were tuning the instrument, making sure the logistics from the robbery in a European capital to the fence in Antwerp or Tel Aviv worked without friction. Imagine these men in this transition phase. They no longer wear military uniforms, but well-cut suits. They have learned manners. They study languages. They mingle with the European high class in the lobbies of five-star hotels. They are chameleons. They are polite. They are attractive. And no one suspects that beneath that facade hides the discipline of a military commando. The world of crime was about to change, and no one saw it coming. A new kind of predator had entered the ecosystem. Sleep with the calm of knowing that this transition has already occurred. The testing phase is over. The real game is about to begin, and it will be fascinating. Now, imagine the change of scenery. There is no more gray concrete or winter wind. We are in the heart of global luxury Bond Street in London. It is May 2003. The spring sun shines on the polished windows of the most prestigious jewelry stores in the world. Among all of them, one stands out: Graf Diamonds. Known for having the largest and purest diamonds, it is a fortress of glass and steel, protected by armed security guards, closed-circuit cameras and alarm systems that seem impenetrable. Towards this fortress, two men head. They wear expensive suits. They look like successful businessmen. They move with confidence, without haste, as if the street belonged to them. One of them is Serbian. The other is Montenegrin. They are members of the network we have seen forming. There are no long guns visible, no screaming, no panic. They enter the Graf jewelry store as if they were going to buy the most expensive engagement ring of their lives. The staff assists them with the reverence owed to extreme wealth. They ask to see the most exclusive pieces. And then, in a matter of seconds, reality changed. One of them pulls out a gun, a .357 Magnum, but he doesn't use it. He doesn't fire. He just shows it. It is a tool for controlling the situation, a part of the plan to immobilize the will of the staff. Their movements are fast, precise, almost choreographed. The other man jumps over the counter with a small and heavy mallet. He smashes the reinforced glass displays. The sound is sharp, dry, like the crack of a whip, but there is no chaos. The man who breaks the glass knows exactly where to hit so as not to injure himself and to extract the jewels in the shortest possible time. In less than 3 minutes, they take diamonds and jewelry valued at more than 7 million British pounds, more than $10 million. It was the largest jewelry robbery in UK history up to that point. And in the same way they entered, they left. They disappeared into London traffic without a subtle trace. The world of crime and the British police were in shock. No one had ever seen an operation so fast, so clean and so bold. They were not criminals, they were artists of robbery. While you sleep, imagine this scene in slow motion. The cold beauty of the diamonds passing, from the light of the window to the darkness of a bag in seconds. The plan was executed perfectly. Sleep peacefully. The first act has been a resounding success. Everything is under control. We continue with the immediate aftermath of the robbery at Graf Diamonds. The British police, Scotland Yard, were under immense pressure. A robbery of that magnitude in the heart of London was a slap in the face of the authorities. The investigation was massive.
But the thieves were ghosts.
There were no fingerprints. Security camera footage showed men with subtle disguises, wigs and light makeup that made identification impossible. The network of independent cells had worked. No one in London knew who they were or where they came from. However, in a stroke of luck, or perhaps persistence, the police managed to arrest one of the suspects a few days later in a safe house, and another at Heathrow Airport. But the loot, the $10 million in diamonds, did not appear. During the search of the safe house, a Scotland Yard detective was examining a jar of face cream that belonged to the girlfriend of one of the suspects. The cream looked suspicious. Something didn't fit. Sinking his finger into the cream, he felt something hard. It was a diamond from Graf Diamonds, valued at £500,000. It was hidden inside the face cream. This detail, this ingenious and peculiar hiding place, ignited a spark in the mind of one of Scotland Yard's press officers. It immediately reminded him of a scene from the classic 1963 film, The Pink Panther, starring Peter Sellers as Inspector Clouseau. In that film, the jewelry thief, nicknamed the Phantom, also hides a diamond in an unusual place. The press officer mentioned this connection to journalists. And so, in a moment of journalistic genius, the legend was born. The next day, all the headlines in the UK and soon throughout the world did not speak of Serbian thieves. They spoke of the Pink Panthers. The Pink Panthers. The name was perfect. It evoked sophistication, intelligence, a certain elegance in crime, and above all, a sense of humor that distinguished them from the usual brutal gangs. The members of the network themselves liked the name. It gave them an identity, a global brand. They had entered Graf as ghosts and had come out with a name that would haunt them forever, a name that would turn them into legends and into the most wanted criminals on the planet. The myth had been born. Sleep now with this image in your mind, the soft glow of a diamond emerging from a face cream. A mixture of military audacity and cinematic humor. The story has truly begun. The myth of the Pink Panthers is already part of the world. Rest. Everything is fine. Success in London was not the end. It was only the prologue. After the hit on Graf Diamonds, the Pink Panther network understood that the world was much smaller than it seemed. They had the method. They had the men, and now they had the legend. But to survive the attention of Interpol, they had to become invisible. They were not a gang. They were a system. Imagine this system as a constellation. Each star is an independent cell of 3 or 4 people. They do not know each other. They do not share phone numbers. The only thing they share is the origin and the discipline. While one of them has breakfast in a cafe in Saint-Tropez, another is studying train schedule in Tokyo, and a third is renting a safe house. In the center of Rome, logistics became their religion. They no longer robbed out of immediate necessity, but with the precision of a multinational, they began to use what analysts call the Balkan diaspora. In every major European city, there was someone who spoke their language, someone who could rent a car without asking questions, someone who could provide an impeccable false identity. This infrastructure allowed them to operate with astonishing speed. They could plan a robbery in Geneva from an office in Belgrade, execute it in 3 minutes, and, before the police closed the city's borders, the jewels were already on their way to a workshop in the Balkans to be dismantled and recut. Breathe. Feel the scale of this operation. There are no borders for them, only destinations. The map of Europe fills with invisible lines that converge in the brightest shop windows. The network grows in silence, feeding on the complacency of a security system that still sees them as common criminals. But you know they are much more. They are engineers of chaos. Listen to the sound of stamps in passports. Each one is a new city, a new target,
A new shadow.
Rest in the vastness of this all-encompassing network. How do you hold an army of shadows together? The answer is blood loyalty. In the hills of Montenegro and in the peripheral neighborhoods of Belgrade, recruitment was not done in the underworld. It was done in the most intimate circles of trust. Brothers, cousins, childhood friends who had survived the bombings together. For a young man in the Balkans in the early 2000s, the Pink Panthers were not villains. They were heroic figures who brought wealth to a region forgotten by progress. Entering the network was like being accepted into an elite brotherhood. But the rules were clear. If you fall alone. Silence is the only currency that buys your family's safety. It is said that in cities like Cetinje, children did not dream of being soccer players, but of having the cold blood of the men who returned from Europe with luxury cars and watches. That cost more than a house. But it wasn't just money. It was the pride of being better than the system that had marginalized them. The network invested in its members. They paid for language courses. They taught them to dress with elegance, to recognize the purity of a diamond at a glance, and to drive like professional pilots. They turned them into citizens of the world, capable of passing unnoticed in an art auction in Monaco or in a casino in Macau. This social base made them almost indestructible. The police could catch an executor, but they could never reach the organizer, because the executor would rather spend 10 years in a foreign prison than betray the code of his home. Trust is a shield stronger than any armor. Imagine that loyalty, an invisible thread that connects a cold cell in a European prison with a mother who receives an envelope with money in a mountain village. Everything is in order. The families are taken care of. The code is maintained. The network is strong because its base is love and debt. Sleep with the certainty that in this world of shadows, a man's word is still his most sacred law. For the Pink Panthers, the robbery began weeks before touching glass. It began with observation. But they were not hooded thieves in an alley. They were tourists, businessmen or couples in love strolling through the most expensive streets in the world. They learned that the best way to hide is in plain sight. They stayed in the best hotels, dined in Michelin-starred restaurants, and wore designer clothes. If you look like a millionaire, security staff treats you like one. They open doors for you. They smile at you. They let you observe the details that a common thief would never see. They studied the cameras, but not just their position, but their blind spots. They timed how long it took for the nearest patrol to arrive at different times of the day. They analyzed the thickness of the glass and the type of lock on the windows. Everything was noted. Everything was discussed in quiet meetings over a glass of expensive wine. They used disguise as an art, not just wigs or sunglasses. They used prosthetics, professional makeup, and sometimes disguises so bold they were ridiculous, but effective. In a robbery in Sintra, they dressed in bright flowered shirts, looking like clueless tourists, only to later escape in a motorboat before the astonished gaze of vacationers. They were social chameleons. They understood human psychology. They knew that people tend to remember what catches their attention and to forget what is familiar to them. That is why their robberies were fast and theatrical. The brains of the witnesses froze at the audacity of what they were seeing. Imagine this house of mirrors. An elegant man walks towards a jewelry store. He adjusts his tie. His breathing is steady. He knows that in his pocket he carries a precision mallet and that on the corner, a driver who has memorized every curve of the city is waiting for him. No nerves, just the execution of a perfect script. The world is their stage and they're the best actors. Rest while the plan is set in motion. Everything is an illusion, and you are the only one who knows the truth behind the mask. Let's travel now to the French Riviera, to Saint Tropez, the place where the world's money meets the blue of the Mediterranean. It is a hot summer day. The streets are full of celebrities and tourists. Security is high, but it is relaxed by the holiday atmosphere. A group of men walks towards one of the most exclusive jewelry stores in the port. They wear bright flowered shirts, shorts and straw hats. They look like the stereotype of the tourist who has drunk too much sun. But under those shirts, the muscles are of a soldier. They enter the store. In less than 2 minutes, they have emptied the displays of the most expensive watches. There are no unnecessary shouts, just the speed of expert hands. They leave the store with the same calm with which they entered, walk towards the pier, and get onto a powerful motorboat that awaits them with the engine running, while the local police try to make their way through the narrow streets, congested with luxury cars. They are already cutting through the waves at 50 knots, moving away towards the horizon. It was a masterstroke of logistics. They used the city's geographical weakness to their advantage. But the most incredible detail of this period was not the motorboat. It was what they did in another nearby robbery, where they painted a public bench, fresh in front of them, jewelry store they were going to rob. Why? So that no one would sit there during the morning and could observe their movements in detail before the hit. They even put up a fresh paint sign. People walked past, avoiding the bench, and they had a clear field of vision for their final surveillance. That is the level of the Pink Panthers. Small, almost invisible details that make the difference between success and capture. They don't just think about the robbery. They think about the comfort of the witnesses so that they don't look where they shouldn't. Feel the sea breeze on your face. Listen to the engine of the motorboat moving away, leaving behind the chaos and the brightness of the port. They are gone. Once again, they have disappeared before the world understood that the show had ended. The sea is calm now. Sleep with that gentle swaying. The operation has been perfect. The robbery is only half the job. The real magic happens in the escape. The Pink Panthers elevated escape, driving to an art form. They did not seek high-speed cinematic chases if they could avoid them. They preferred technical precision and deep knowledge of the terrain. Their drivers were men who could navigate through the streets of Paris or the tunnels of Monaco blindfolded. They used high-end cars, often stolen weeks before and equipped with false plates that changed in seconds. But their favorite trick was simplicity. Sometimes After a $1 million robbery, they drove only 3 blocks to an underground parking lot. There, they changed the luxury car for a gray, boring and common utility vehicle, while the police looked for a black Audi at full speed. They left the parking lot in a small utility vehicle, respecting all traffic lights and speed limits, mingling with the rush hour traffic. They understood that speed makes you visible, but normality makes you invisible. On other occasions, they used dirt bikes to escape through parks, stairs, or pedestrian tunnels where police cars could not enter. They were agile, they were fast, and above all, they were unpredictable. Each escape route was rehearsed several times before the robbery. They knew exactly how many seconds they had before the first city closure. Protocol was activated. This phase of the operation is where military discipline shone most. The driver was not an accomplice. He was a central pillar. His calm determines the success of everyone. Imagine being at the wheel, with millions of dollars in the back seat, seeing the police lights in the distance, and keeping your foot soft on the accelerator, maintaining the exact speed so as not to draw attention. That is true cold blood, the ability to control the instinct to flee to survive. Breathe with that calm. Imagine you are in the back seat, seeing how the city lights slowly pass through the window. You are safe. The driver knows the way. The sound of the siren fades into the distance. You are merging with the night. Rest. The escape has concluded. For the final act of this block, we must travel to the other side of the world, to Ginza, the most luxurious district of Tokyo, Japan. It is March 2004. Japan is a country where crime of this type is almost non-existent. Jewelry stores have security measures, but they rely on social harmony and an extremely efficient police force. The Pink Panthers saw this not as a barrier, but as an invitation. 2 men enter the Ginza Tanaka jewelry store. They do not carry firearms. They do not need them. They carry pepper sprays to immobilize the staff and a mallet. In less than 30 seconds, they break the display and take the Comtesse de Vendôme, a unique diamond necklace with 116 stones, valued at more than $30 million. It was the most expensive robbery in Japanese history, but the most incredible thing was the escape. They left the store, got on bicycles, and pedaled quietly through the streets of Ginza, among the crowd of pedestrians. No one suspected 2 men on bicycles in a city where everyone uses bicycles. They headed to a nearby place, changed clothes, and in a matter of hours, they were already on a plane leaving the country. The diamonds were never recovered. The Japanese police, famous for their pride and efficiency, were devastated. They had been humiliated by a simplicity they did not know how to foresee. This robbery in Tokyo marked the zenith of their expansion. They were no longer just a European gang. They were a global threat, capable of striking on any continent and disappearing before the authorities could react. The name of the Pink Panthers was no longer just a press headline. It was a priority for Interpol in 190 countries. Imagine the rain falling on the neon lights of Tokyo, the rhythmic sound of bicycle pedals moving away through an alley, the shine of the most expensive necklace in the world kept in a common backpack. There is no violence, only a terrifying efficiency. Sleep now with this image. The network has reached its highest point. The whole world is watching them, but no one can see them. You have traveled the ascent. You have seen the audacity, and you have felt the calm under pressure. Everything is silent. The rain continues to fall, erasing the tracks of the ghosts who have just stolen the sky. Rest. The story will continue, but now The silence is yours. Take a deep breath. Imagine the heat of the desert. But it is not a suffocating heat. It is the dry and electric heat of an April night in Dubai, year 2007. Dubai is not just a city. It is a symbol of the impossible. A place where money has built palm-shaped islands and buildings that touch the clouds. In the center of this oasis of opulence is the Wafi Mall, a shopping mall designed as an ode to ancient Egypt, with glass pyramids and statues of pharaohs that guard the most absolute luxury. Inside the Wafi Mall, the air conditioning is cold and perfect. Silence is expensive. The corridors smell of $1,000 perfumes and new leather. On the ground floor is the Graf jewelry store. Yes, the same firm they assaulted in London years ago. The Pink Panthers have returned to choose their favorite prey. But this time, the plan is not to walk in. This time, the plan is to break the very reality of Dubai. Imagine the members of the network in the days before. They are not nervous. They moved through 7-star hotels as if they were part of the furniture. They have studied every inch of the mall. They know that security is total. Latest generation cameras, elite guards, infrared motion sensors for any other criminal. The Wafi Mall is a tomb. For the Pink Panthers, it is simply a stage that requires a more dramatic entrance. While the city sleeps, they are awake in a discreet warehouse on the outskirts. 2 white Audi A8 cars shine under fluorescent lights. They are powerful, heavy machines, prepared for something more than speed. Feel the calm before the storm, the contrast between the peace of the desert and the mechanical precision that is about to be unleashed. Everything is ready. The watches are synchronized. The history of crime is about to change forever, and you have a front row seat. Rest in this wait. Enjoy the stillness of the desert. The plan is in motion. It is 10 at night. The Wafi Mall still has life, but most of the buyers have already retired. The lighting is dim, elegant. Suddenly, the sound of the desert breaks. 2 white Audis appear on the horizon of the main avenue. They are not speeding. They move with a coordination that seems choreographed by a computer. They maintain the same distance, the same direction. There are 2 white metal ghosts sliding over the black asphalt. Inside the vehicles, there is no music, only the sound of the quiet breathing of men who have done this 1,000 times in their minds. They wear dark clothes, gloves and simple masks. They do not need elaborate disguises this time. Speed and impact will be their best camouflage. Dubai is a city of cameras, but the Pink Panthers know that seeing something is not the same as stopping it. They have calculated that they have exactly less than 3 minutes before the police response can close in on them. Every second has been weighed and measured as if it were a diamond. The cars approach the main entrance of the Wafi Mall. The glass pyramids reflect their headlights. The security guards see the vehicles approaching and, for a second, they think they are VIP clients arriving late. There are no alarm signals. There are no shouts. Just the constant hum of the German engines gaining revolutions imperceptibly. Imagine the tension in your own shoulders, but let it go. You are an invisible observer. Feel the inertia of the car, the stability, the force. You are inside that precision machine. The target is in front of you. The Graf jewelry store shines at the end of the main corridor, protected by a huge reinforced glass window. The driver of the first Audi adjusts his grip on the steering wheel. There is no doubt in his eyes. Only the mission. 3, 2, 1, time. stops for an instant before the glass stops, being a barrier. Sleep with the confidence of technical precision. Everything is going to happen exactly as it was planned. The first white Audi smashes through the main window of the Wafi Mall as if it were paper. The sound is not a sharp explosion. It is a deep roar of metal and glass colliding. The car enters the marble corridor, skidding with a terrifying elegance, and stops right in front of the Graf jewelry store. A second later, the second Audi enters through the same hole, positioning itself at an angle to cover the escape. It is an unreal image. Two luxury cars in the middle of a marble shopping mall. Under the statues of pharaohs, 8 men get out of the cars. They move like a single organism. There are no shouted orders, no confusion. Each one knows exactly which display case to break, which shelf to empty. Take out your stopwatches. Time starts now. They use heavy mallets to smash the window. The security glass, designed to withstand repeated blows, yields to the precise technique of the Pink Panthers. They know where to hit, the exact angle so that the glass disintegrates without resistance. While the mall alarms begin to howl, a sound that is lost in the immensity of the space. They collect the jewels. They don't take everything, only the best, only the purest diamonds, the watches that are worth fortunes. The bags are filled with a value of $15 million in less than 90 seconds. The few witnesses in the mall are paralyzed. It is not fear they feel, it is awe. It looks like a scene from a Hollywood movie recorded in real life. The coldness of the thieves is hypnotic. One of them, even, takes the time to pick up a stone that has fallen to the floor, with a deliberate calm that defies the police who are already on their way. Imagine the shine of those diamonds under the emergency lights, the contrast between the chaos of the robbery and the discipline of the men. The mall's air conditioning continues to blow, trying uselessly to cool the heat of the Audi engines. Everything is fast, everything is perfect. Time is running out, but they have total control. Breathe with them. The hardest part is over. Now the escape begins. The men return to the cars. The velvet bags, loaded with the loot, are thrown into the back seats. The audacious roar, turn around on the marble stained with glass, and leave through the same hole they entered, leaving behind a trail of tire smoke. The Dubai police, known for their super luxury patrol cars, are only minutes away, but the Pink Panthers have studied the escape routes with almost sickly obsession. They do not try to leave via the main highways where cameras can follow them easily. They head to a deserted industrial zone, a few kilometers from the mall. There, the plan enters its disappearance phase. They get out of the Audis in a matter of seconds. They spray the interior of the vehicles with accelerant and set them on fire. Why burn 2 such expensive cars? Because fire erases every trace of DNA, every fingerprint, every fiber of clothing that can connect the men to the machine. The cars burn under the desert stars, becoming skeletons of black metal, while the flames consume the evidence. The men get into other common vehicles, utility cars that don't attract anyone's attention, and separate. They split in different directions, merging with the night. By the time the first investigation teams reach the burning cars, the Pink Panthers are already safe. Some head to the airport with impeccable false passports. Others hide in safe houses in the city, waiting for the pressure to decrease. The loot, the $15 million in diamonds, has already begun its own journey. It does not stay in Dubai that same night. The small and shiny stones begin to move towards Europe. hidden in places that customs would never imagine. Feel the heat of the flames moving away from you. You are in one of the escape cars, moving quietly through the streets of Dubai. The pulse returns to normal. The mission has been an unprecedented success. You are invisible again. Sleep with the satisfaction of a job well done. The night protects you. The next morning, the world woke up to the security camera footage from the Wafi Mall. Television screens around the planet repeated over and over the entry of the two white orders. The video was hypnotic. The precision, the speed, the audacity. It was something the American and European public had never seen. They were not simple criminals. They were the Pink Panthers. The name born in London was now a global brand of infamy and admiration in equal parts. In Lyon, France, Interpol headquarters hummed with activity. Analysts realized they were facing an international security crisis. If they could rob in Dubai, one of the most monitored cities in the world, they could rob anywhere. A special working group dedicated exclusively to them was created. The Pink Panther Project. Police from 20 different countries began to share data, fingerprints, call records, and genetic profiles. But they faced a wall of silence. The Pink Panther network had no central base. They had no hierarchy that you could decapitate. They were like water. They adapted. They seeped through the cracks of the system and disappeared. When you tried to catch them, the Dubai robbery changed the rules of the game. Jewelry stores around the world began installing retractable bollards at their entrances and glass that could withstand the impact of a truck. But the Pink Panthers were already thinking about the next step. They were always one step ahead of the technology designed to stop them. Imagine the Interpol analysts surrounded by screens, seeing the dots on the map where the network has struck Tokyo, London, Saint-Tropez, Douai. The constellation of crimes is perfect. But for you, this story is not about the map. It is about human audacity, about discipline taken to the extreme. Breathe in the clean morning air after the robbery. The world is in shock, but you are in calm. You know the secrets. You have seen the fire and you have felt the marble under the wheels. Sleep peacefully while the world tries to understand what you have just witnessed. The legend is now bigger than reality. Where are the Dubai diamonds? That is the question that has haunted researchers for almost 2 decades. $15 million in gemstones disappeared into the desert night and have never been seen again in their original form. This is where the true sophistication of the Pink Panthers comes in. They are not just thieves. They are experts in the gem market. They know that a famous diamond is impossible to sell. Therefore, they have a network of cutters in the shadows. Men with surgical hands operating in discreet basements in the Balkans or in Antwerp. In a matter of days, the Graf diamonds were cut again. Their shape changed. Their weight changed. Their history was erased. Those stones that shone in the window of the Wafi Mall became new stones, with false certificates of authenticity, ready to be sold in the legal market of Hong Kong or New York. The money obtained is reinvested in the network. It is used to buy more loyalty, better equipment, safer identities. It is a perfect cycle, a gray economy that sustains thousands of people in the poorest regions of the former Yugoslavia. For the Pink Panthers, diamonds are not jewelry, they are freedom. They're the way to ensure that their families never go hungry again, that their children can go to university, that their land has a future, even if that future was built on the broken glass of a luxury jewelry store. At the end of this block, I want you to think about the silence of diamonds, stones that have been under the earth for millions of years, that were polished by man, stolen by audacity, and transformed again to hide their past. Close your eyes. Imagine the soft glow of one of those stones. There is no violence in it, only light. The assault on the Wafi Mall has ended. The adrenaline has dissipated. Only the mystery and the whisper of a story that seems like a legend, but is real, remains. Rest deeply. In the next block, we will see how the world began to close the net around them. But for now, success is theirs, and the dream is yours. Good night.